Hey everyone, I'm an undercooked ball of dough, and welcome back to Pretty Damn Good, a series where I look at some of the songs that came out in the past week or so that I thought were pretty damn good. No matter if it's a single, a one-off, or a deep cut, I try to highlight some of my favorites of this week in no particular order, starting off with 911 by Pivot Gang. So, between this and their last single, Aang, it looks like Pivot Gang is en route to a new project, and not a moment too soon. Admittedly, I'm a little late to the party with this group, but ever since hearing Saba's few good things with the Pivot Gang posse on full display throughout, I could tell this collective was something special, even if I am a sucker for posse cuts in general. Regardless, the hook from Saba branches perfectly between the nostalgic numbness of appreciating your roots and the forlorn familiarity of violence and street politics. And as the song progresses, we get some standout verses from MFN Mello and Fresh Water, both of whom seem to vent their frustrations in the system they have to overcome. My favorite verse, though, probably has to be from Joseph Chilliams, who closes the song in what I'd like to interpret as a kind of rally cry after the venting from everyone else in the group to keep moving on and kicking ass. I will say the instrumental is lacking a proper bass foundation to send it into a truly ethereal setting. Still though, 911 does show a lot of focus on the personalities that could be a really good introduction to Pivot Gang for those not yet initiated. Up next, we have Arms by Sifo. Honestly, this song is the pinnacle of incorporating a wall of sound production style into neo soul. Everything that you could possibly ask for in a composition like this is just thrown in alongside elements that don't even feel like they should work, but making it work all the same. From the start of a simple 2-chord piano progression in the beginning, bass and a few low strings quickly follow with a confidently unashamed but toxically dependent baritone from Sifo himself. As more elements keep getting tacked on, like hazy guitar timbres, percussion, and harps, the whole congregation seems to double, even triple in mass, to the point of implosion. More hooks and progressions carry the weight in an Atlasian feat where noise of what sounds like a theremin on steroids cracks the shell. All the while, Sifo's voice is pleading in the center of it all and chilling caterwauls of desire, bobbing in and out of a sea of sensation trying to drown him out all the same. It's an epic song that deserves all the praise for the spectacular building it does sonically and artistically. Check it out for sure. Now on to something completely different. Here's Bonga by Sababa 5. So Sababa 5 is an Israeli instrumental funk band that I discovered while doing my usual weekly Bandcamp crate digs, and the result here comes from their eponymous full-length debut, this being the opening track. While I enjoyed some of the other songs from it as well, such as Hadabil, there is something so intrinsically hypnotic about this song in particular. Maybe it's how the keys feel so blocky in harmonic definition but amorphous in melodic contour, like a cobra dancing to the flutes. Maybe it's the understated nature of the rhythm section in conjunction with all the pieces on display here, especially at the expense of the drums feeling so minimal and truncated and plotting. Maybe it's the way the bass feels so gummy in texture yet tense in groove to add an eeriness to the sensation that otherwise wouldn't really be there. Regardless, the funk here feels more like jazz and integral to an interpretive dance and improvisational elements, and the fidelity seems intentionally murky, kind of like a John Wizard's track. This is the kind of mix of euphoria and dysphoria that I was glad to uncover in such an unexpected location all the same. From low-key funk to low-key pop, up next is Be With You by Coco and Claire Claire featuring Dado Black. So, this song is an odd one to include, mostly because of how trashy it presents itself initially before flowering out into the depths to realize how shallow everything they spout in the verses is. The production also flows through this same frame where the sampled vocals fit quite well with the synth pad in the intro before the pad is removed to expose a monster of vapidness and clear issues of self-comparison that the vocal sample itself is. The drums are infectious in how danceable they are, and Dado Black follows a similar frame in her verse about taxing the generic rich man that she's trying to cop. But then the chorus feels so Pink Pantheresque in nature, and the crystalline tears and hushed deliveries about wanting to be a perfect fit for others and feeling like crying for help all alone. It's a very depressive sound, especially when, in retrospect, the flexes feel genuinely forced to the point of covering up all these self-imposed flaws. And frankly, the whole album that Be With You comes from fits this same vein, so if this is up your lane, I would definitely recommend checking out Sexy for yourself as well. It's an interesting bit of alt dance R&B for sure. Continuing themes of tough exteriors in the face of adversity, up next we have Big Pussy by Brockhampton. I just love saying up next we have Big Pussy. Now, as much as I love posse cuts, it's not really fair to call this one since it's essentially an extended Kevin Abstract verse with some bizarre samples from the punk band Germs, Brooklyn rapper Smooth the Hustler, and a completely tweaked out jazz portion to start things off. But still, this song shows how much of the spirit of Brockhampton is present in Kevin, solo or otherwise, as he goes on a trip of reminiscence about the way the band is at the end of the road. The beat goes from grimy bass fuzz to soul-sampled euphoria at the flip of a dime as well, showing the contrast in the stream of consciousness Kevin goes down, all the more realizing and seemingly finalized in this. It touches on a lot of points throughout the group's time being together both lyrically and sonically, but it also feels unique in that it traces historically much more than any other Brockhampton cut, showing a sense of nostalgia engrossed in setting the record straight. It truly makes me interested in whatever Brockhampton has coming with the family, and I hope that the end result is something that feels right for them as well, given everything that's being unpacked here. From closing a chapter to opening one up next we have Girlfriend by Hemlocke Springs. It feels weird talking about a singer's second ever single on a series like this, especially given that Hemlocke seems to have similar marketing and connections that would make a lot of people call her an industry plant. But still, this song shows a level of quirk and charisma that you don't really hear on a song as early in an artist's development as this. Springs' vocals and lyrics show quite a playful nature to them, much like a cartoon character, and actually sounding a bit like Mabel from Gravity Falls now that I'm saying it out loud. This is probably one of the few pop songs that go through the effort of actually naming arrhythmia rather than just spelling out that her heart skips a beat, which I honestly really find interesting as a detail. Then the second verse and bridge show the flaws of the character Springs is portraying with over-inflections reminiscent of the Family Jewels era Marina. They're a nice touch to the song all around. Everything keeps building up in intensity around the possibility of love despite the hesitation in both parties, to the point where the last chorus has so many overdubs of questioning the situation before the bottom falls out, ultimately seeming as though it's all an elaborate daydream at best. As such, Hemlocke Springs shows that she is truly a name to watch out for in pop going forward. Great stuff. And on to another surprise that I was not anticipating. Up next, we have If I Died Last Night by Jessie Murph. I'll be honest, I've never really been a fan of Jessie Murph before now. In fact, I genuinely couldn't bear to hear some of her earlier singles, so I don't know how much of the interest I'm showing in her newest song here will extend to her future catalog. However, there is something oddly compelling about this twangy, rollicking composition, and the way that Murph's voice blends so well into it. It reminds me a lot of Elle King in a lot of ways, and how the rasp creeps into the higher register the further you get entangled into the melody, but the depressive subject matter Murph has cultivated here heavily distinguishes her away from that mold as well. It's as though the introspection on this song hits a lot harder, like she truly is alone in bed smoking away her hopes through dreams of death in the face of her lover. The pedal steel guitar, the authentic fiddles, and banjo on the song give a breath of reality to this that I think it wouldn't otherwise have for a lot of the bleak lyrics that she conjures. If she continues to go down this route of polished pop country, I would love to see what Jessie Murph has up her sleeve, because this fits her talents a lot better than her poppier misdirections before. Continuing the surprise train but in a different direction, may I present to you Kamikaze by Connie Constance. That's a tongue twister. To go from what I've heard Connie Constance from before, that being probably the best song from Swedish House Mafia's debut album this year, Heaven Take You Home, is the kind of whiplash that I've lived for here on this series. Like, this is just a straight up Riot Grrrl track, what with some of the most unabashed
Feminist
lyrics out there. The growl of the vocal presets, and the drum and bass essentially running this track on a treadmill in terms of intensity. The lo-fi aesthetic of it all is truly inspired, making the noise that sprawls through feel like it's an echo chamber mutating to new overtones over on and out. My favorite part, though, definitely has to be the brief breakdown in the bridge, where it's just a clean guitar tone while Constant reads the couplet, "I'm not your perfect little princess, I have my own unique vagina." It's an amazing moment that definitely needed to stand out for the sheer audacity it adds to the punk shouts before and afterwards here. While the rest of the album that Kamikaze comes from, Miss Power, is great as well, this is a fierce moment of frustration at the expectations thrown her way that blows the rest of the album out of the water. Definitely my favorite song to come out of this week. For this next one, let's take a moment to catch our breaths with To Last by Tyla. This is a nice piece of trance house fused quite well with some Afrobeat rhythms for a very mournful breakup song about someone's first breakup. In fact, I see this almost as like a companion piece to the Hemlocke Springs song from earlier this episode, where the indifference in Springs' character is countered here with Tyla, a South African-born singer who feels betrayed and led astray by the actions of indifference and not wanting to build up from the foundational aspects of love. And then the turmoil becomes lifted into a whirlwind of emotions in the drop that shows the 808s drifting from side to side on top of an arpeggio of synths, unbalanced in fundamentals and showcasing a really unique effect and scope. In addition, the way the echo has such a low decay ratio on the titular line in the hook adds to the feeling of lingering on that you get after your first heartbreak. It's quite minimal in presentation, but the ideas it presents are so effective, and Tyla has such a silky smooth voice that the blocks used to make this song feel more like a castle than a shed. It's a great song, definitely check it out. And finally, we have Why Spare Me Tears by Elmiene. In a week where the theme seems to be surprises, I'm glad to have a song to end the week out for just showing a sweetly produced R&B track with some edges of psychedelic soul creeping in at the very end. Elmiene has such a calming control over his own voice, it's unbelievable how he slides between different runs between focal points in the melody so consistently and effortlessly. The backdrop of bittersweet guitar and bass above subdued rim shots from the drums is so simple in its eloquence before the fuzzed out keyboard tones take over the last quarter of the song for an outro that questions all the pain had from someone who broke up with Elmiene begging for him to come back. It's a very unrequited experience on display that shows an unbothered narrator trying to understand why the other side is tearing themselves up like this and results from their own actions. It's cold in demeanor surely, but understandably frustrated from the sudden re-involvement of his own character in the fray. It's heartbreaking in its lack of empathy, but on the other side of the token, it's pretty damn good. That's all the stuff that I wanted to highlight this week, though I do have a couple honorable mentions that I want to cap off this episode with, including Mama Dolly Jesus by Madeline Edwards for being another great example of why we need more people of color in modern country music, Cursive by Ghost Orchard for having a very tranquil vibe in the midst of some rawly produced guitars and drums, and 1035 by Tiesto and Tate McRae for following a familiar mold for deep house music in the 2010s, while also fitting into a relatively nostalgic recess of my brain. If you have any music from the past week that you think I am an imbecile for not including here, of course you gotta let me know down in the comments below. Keep the conversation going about music for now until the end of time. If you'd like to like and subscribe and maybe even follow my socials, that'd be helpful too. I need to seek validation for every single minor thing that I do, of course. And before I sign off, I just want to reiterate that my mashup album Stoned at Karaoke is out now. You can click the card at the end here to check out some of these abominations or masterpieces, depending on how you view mashup culture as a whole. Anyways, my name is Par of Par in the Music, and I hope that you have a pretty damn good one out there. I'll see you later.